The introduction was for everybody that wasn't here, but you know what? That's good, because it keeps in light with the class as if there was no layoff. So what layoff? I never heard of a layoff. Hey, here we are for the Mishlei class on schedule. Brian, hey, happens to be here. There you go, Brian. Can you take us through chapter 5, verse 17, and Joe, please?
I can do that.
Go slow. Got it?
I'm here.
Got it?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
Read that verse again.
Yeah, slow.
See how happy is the man whom God reproves. Do not reject the discipline of the Almighty.
Okay. So now I understand the commentary a little bit better, because I wasn't focusing on the aspect. So the things we're going to see is alongside Musar, which is going to be, I mean, it's interesting, is that the translation is instruction. And what we're seeing is that I wouldn't have thought that's instruction, but when you go full circle, I mean, it's really beating up. But when you get beat up, or you beat somebody up, conceptually, you're trying to instruct them. Again, it's a strange way of understanding instruction, but when you look at life for what life is, isn't that what all instruction is? You know, when the teacher asks, it's din, but it's when it's instruction, right? When the teacher says, does anybody know what the capital of Alabama is? And no one raises their hand because they're like, oh man, Alabama is the hard state. And they're like, the teacher says, you guys never do your homework. How can you go to college and succeed in this world if you don't do your homework? That's instruction. I mean, that's why I personally hated school. In fact, on a couple of Shabbases ago, I get in my little moods on Shabbos, and I was looking up in Webster's dictionary the word school. Okay, does anybody know what the word school means? Who wants to take a stab at it? I know it's a ridiculous question. Somebody please grab the microphone and tell me what school is. Don't go there. What is school? In the colloquial sense, what is school? Someone take the microphone and tell me. A place of learning. That's what most people would think, right? My little tirade on Shabbos was, why I didn't like school as a kid. But you know what? One of the definitions of school was in the dictionary, which I took a lot of, because the church is like the definition of the West. When you look at the vessels and lexicon and in the English language itself, right, is all church. I mean, the word assumption means the deification of Mary. So, the concept of school is church. And that's why I think I didn't like it as a kid. And yeah, it's an organization that provides instruction. That's what you would think. Hey, isn't it great to get educated, Eric? Isn't that great? Isn't it amazing an experience? We get to get educated. But what does school really mean in America? Right? It's like, I'm taking you to school, son. I mean, that's what it is. It's punishment. That's the other definition in Webster's dictionary. I schooled him. In basketball, I crossed over, dribbled past you. I took you to school. That's right. It's prison. And I'm like, man, that's really true. Public school in America, where I come from, is prison. It is not a fun experience. So there is a serious beat up mentality of giving instruction. You see what I'm saying? Life really carries that leather belt mentality. And therefore, it's ironic when we see the word instruction in Mishlei, like in the picture, it's like, oh, that's wonderful, private attention and tutors and little magic wands about how to learn is wonderful, and positive re-encouragement to children. It's such a wonderful world, isn't it? Let's all sing Kumbaya. But you get into the real world and you find out that the instruction is a little bit more brutal than you would have thought. Eric, you and I talked about this the other night, Eric Bryan. We had a nice Skype session. That's right. Everyone knows my bit of an addiction and fascination with wrestling, right? And they had, my website that I like to go to, flowwrestling.org. They came out with a new biography of this guy who was everybody's hero, Kerry Colott. They're like, Kerry Colott was the greatest high school wrestler of all time. And I'm like, yeah, I'm all for that. I thought I was the greatest high school wrestler once upon a time, and my delusions of grandeur as a kid, I would love to find out how, Kerry Colott would made it to the world championships at 15 years old. So I was excited. And I'm a fan in my, relatively old age. And I'm watching the bio, and it was the night that I talked to Eric, so it's like I was on my mind. And they're like, this kid who was young, his dad made him do, I think, 10,000 push-ups a day at like 10 years old. And then he burned him with a cattle prod on his hands. And he said, if the next time you don't, get a takedown and win, you're going to get another shock from the cattle prod. And I'm saying to myself, my mom was giving me punishments of like, no Oreo cookies and cream ice cream for you before bedtime. That was my punishment. If I talked back, I didn't get ice cream. Whereas this kid, if he didn't get a world championship, they're going to burn him with a cattle prod. And I'm saying it's exploitation. It's not normal to expect this from people. So the greatness that we see in the world usually does come from exploitation. And then on the blurb on the website was, and all of Kerry's hard work paid off. Really? Abusing children is called hard work paying off? So my point is not to necessarily take it to the extreme, but on one hand, why was I not a great wrestler? Because I didn't know rebuke and retribution in terms of wrestling. And I'm glad. I mean, I'm glad to see that now there's method of the madness of why I wasn't a good wrestler. Right? I wasn't willing to be burned, in my palms by my wrestling coach. At the same time, we don't understand the extent that people go through to get their instruction. I mean, you've seen like these Tibetan monks that do karate and stuff. They like break logs against their leg. I mean, it's an insane world. And we all have our threshold of pain in our own insanities. I mean, for me, to get instruction in Torah and yeshiva, I literally lived in a cave and spot. And I learned how to read kind of into the wee hours of the morning, grueling pain of just reading, not even knowing what I was reading, just learning how to read, foreign language, and to the point of craftsmanship quality like Kerry Colott and the wrestling mat. And everybody in this room has their threshold of pain experience. I mean, everybody has their thing. So again, the point I'm driving home is instruction sounds like a very nice thing. But in the end of the day, and the wisdom of the world is extremely painful instruction. That's how you learn. I did not get a good wrestling education because I didn't feel the pain. I didn't run hard on every sprint. I didn't try that hard. So I'm asking myself at 37, hey, why wasn't I a great wrestler? How about because you felt no pain in that process? And the pain you would have had to have felt was being burned by a cattle prod. So in the end of the day, do I really want to be a great wrestler? Should I go back and regret, hey, I should have been burned by a cattle prod? No, you shouldn't be. Nobody should be. But when it comes to the wisdoms of the world, that we all have an obligation to do. When you go to driving school and you don't want to be there, that's pain. But it's a pain that we all have to go through. It's societal pain, and there's no getting out of it. And that's where the instruction comes from. In Kabbalah, you call that the Eitz Chaim, the tree of life. Even this talk right now is a bit painful, right? I'm kind of coming down pretty harsh. I'm not letting up. If you don't pay attention to this, the pace that I'm setting here, you're going to feel some pain. And if already you've let your guard down in my rant right now, you're feeling pain. Will he shut up? Can we move on? And you're not getting it. But if you are keeping up and you're with me right now, you understand exactly where I'm going and why I'm hitting this point, right? Because at that point, the wisdom becomes a necessary pain, the pain of instruction. But if you're not with it, then you're not interested in the pain of wisdom. My job is to give the pain of wisdom. And I am going to take a little bit more liberty to give a rant right here because I'm seeing where I'm going now. And that is, Travis, you and I talked about this earlier. Rabbi Katz, can you just tell me what Ger is? The answer is no. And I think now in this class tonight, we can see why my answer is always no. Because I cannot withhold the pain from you. I can't. The thing about this, if I don't make it painful for you, then I am literally transgressing the words of Solomon. And I'm not talking about cattle prodding, okay? Rabbi Katz is not exploiting people with cattle prodding, and you come to my office and I burn you at the palms, right? I don't know, Eric Carlson, is Lars in the crowd tonight? Is Lars here? All right, Lars, did I cattle prod you when you came to my office? You were here over the summer, right? I don't remember cattle prodding you. So, but I do make it ultra painful for people in terms of King Solomon Musar instruction. And I know, Lars, I got you pretty good. We had a couple discussions, I think, after you went back from my house, and I know we had a discussion about the woman that was teaching, and I wasn't budging. I just can't. Like ask Noah and Michael Schulman. I'm not against them, but at the same time, I can't just say like, hey, yeah, great book, go ahead. I can't, because he's trying to cheapen the experience of wisdom, and I just can't do that. Just can't do it. Ger cannot be made a pleasant experience. It's not the fairy godmother who comes in and I can say, hey, it's a great experience learning Ger, everybody. It's very simple, and we do sing Kumbaya after every episode. I really do. I wish that was the case, but I can't do that. And again, I never saw the reason to go this route that I'm explaining it now, but I can see it. The instruction in Musar of King Solomon. Again, I'm a total phony if I'm not going to give the disciplines of wisdom as I'm attempting to teach wisdom, right? And I think we can see it very clearly with Solomon's words now. Is everybody with me on this point? I'm having a total kind of epiphany right now why I do make it so hard. So, why is Rabbi Katz? I don't know what these guys saying. I don't get what he's saying. Why does he make it so hard? Well, here's your answer. Ask King Solomon why it had to be from Musar instruction. Why does it have to be the crossover dribble to get schooled? I am a wrestling fan at the end of the day. And I hate the University of Iowa because I'm an Ohio State Buckeye fan. But what I like about Iowa's mentality, and this goes back to Dan Gable, one of the classics of all time, is that when you go to wrestle for Iowa, like you have to understand when you're that guy, you're getting beat up your entire first year. That's without question. You're literally going to go there. You're it's like, thank you, sir, may I have another? You're going to get beat up for 1 year. And when I say beat up, I mean really beat up. I mean, they're going to literally put Matt Burns on your face every day for a year. And you're either going to get it and grow and be able to endure, or you're gonna check out. And that's not the cattle prodding. That really is not. That's not even that. The cattle prodding is something that's offensive. This is just kind of like reality protocol, whereas most schools kind of have mercy and say, here, we'll wrestle the easiest guy in the room. But wisdom and God in Torah is Iowa. It really is. God is not letting up on you. But there is easy ways to get ahead and to succeed. In terms of Ger, and it never ceases to amaze me why people don't read the book. I know people like, Jacques get a hard time getting the book for a while, so I have Rachmanis on that. But, they say, I just don't get it. I ask them all the time, did you get the book? And every time it's like, no. Why? Why? I'm trying to make it. I'm trying my best to make it the fuzzy wuzzy experience. I'm trying my hardest, but you have to pay attention and keep up. Right. So, anyways, I think the Ger message is very apropos to what we're saying with King Solomon of how instruction sounds like it should. Like the book is instruction, but at the same time, instruction also means getting beat up a little bit. You guys with me? One or two? All right. So it is what it is. It is what it is. Let's go ahead and get into the verse now. So again, what I found interesting was the verse oscillates Musar, which is the instruction. I think now I've given a pretty layman good understanding of what Musar is. It's the instruction of all these different levels. You guys feel pretty comfortable with instruction, Musar, as I've explained it. Then there's an oscillated concept called Tachacha, which is rebuke. And rebuke is a little bit different than the Musar instruction. Rebuke is when we're in the wrestling room and the guy, he's not in the mold of being beat up. Or even let's say he is being beat up, okay? You got the rookie in the room and he's being beat up. The coach secretly likes the kid. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in the room. He would have told him, to check out. The coach then says to the kid, "Hey, Johnson, did you ever think about using both your legs and not just one?" And I used to hate that as a kid. It's like, what does he mean? As I didn't know what he meant. But if you take the rebuke and stop thinking like you know more than everybody, which was my problem, because I wasn't interested in that kind of pain. But in the life wisdom aspect of it, the rebuke is verbal and it's a jab to help you get better, right? It's not like an insult, and it's not adding insult to injury. It's like I'll give you what rebuke is. You ready for this? I think you guys like this. I'll give you a perfect mashal of what this whole thing is. Give me a 1 or 2 if you saw The Matrix, part 1. Okay. Musar. Are you serious, Lars? You got to get that movie. Lars, you have to. Somebody please get Lars Matrix. This is not happening to me. Exactly. Jacques, we got to get you to see it too. Anyways, for those following along, I'm sure somebody can explain it after class for those that didn't see it. It was Musar for Neo to end up in the office thing where Morpheus told him, hey, Agent Smith is coming for you. Guys, remember that scene with the cell phone? All right, that's called Musar. That was like, insult to injury, being thrown into this horrible situation. Oh man, what's going on with my life? How many of you have felt like you've been in that position before? You got the cell phone arrive and some guy on the other line, and you got Agent Smith ready to kill you. Now the tachacha, the rebuke, is when Morpheus tells Neo, there's 2 ways out of here. One by Smith, one by the scaffolding. How many of you remember that scene? Okay, I can actually stop teaching right now, and this would be enough. You see what I'm saying? You're in the horrible situation, and then you get the guy who tells you like, well, there's 2 ways out of here. You can go by him or you can go by the scaffolding. I mean, that's life 101. That is literally life 101. And so we have to understand that God is behind that. God is behind it. It's engineered. And like every wrestling match, and I'm only seeing this now. Recently, I saw a great match. Kind of funny on Facebook. Somebody posted a video of Jim Jordan, the congressman. in the House of Representatives, and he was actually a hometown hero, and he beat in college like one of the greatest wrestler of American history. So a rabbi on Facebook posted Jim Jordan in the House of Representatives, and I posted his match wrestling against John Smith in the NCAA finals. They're probably like, why in the world would this guy post this? And they didn't realize it was the same guy. So what I liked about watching that match was for the first time as a wrestling fan, because I actually I'm trying to like relive my past, which is what tomorrow's class is going to be all predicated upon, just for you guys to know that, of really trying to make sense out of your past and to allow the flow, allowing yourself to exist. So I'm trying to understand wrestling because it's helping me understand my transitions in life to where I'm at on many levels. It's being authentic. I do like the sport. I didn't get it as a kid, and I'm realizing now I can understand the sport and I don't have to get burned by a cattle prod. And it's actually a type of enjoyment. It's kind of like, how when you take a test and you didn't pass, but you learn the answers later on of, it's tshuva, it's repair. You're learning with the mistakes that you made. It's just interesting. If I put that much effort in the past, your past doesn't go away. Okay. If you tried to ride a bike, a million times and you just didn't get it, your soul is still trying to figure out how to ride the bike. Even though you tell yourself, hey, bikes are stupid and they're for kids and I'm a big boy now, you're lying because you're really trying to still figure out how to ride that bike. And that's what tomorrow's class is about, that transition. It does. It really has a shadow. So I'm trying to understand wrestling. And look, understanding about Kerry Collat helped me a lot because I understand, what my youth was about. I didn't have a dad trying to burn me with a cattle prod. And until you understand that the kid that you looked up to did, then you have no regrets. And, the metaphor of leaving the shoes on the mat, I can do that now. I can let go of my childhood without having to point fingers and pass the blame. I would have been great, but somebody blocked me because they are actually better and stronger than God. Because that's what you're saying. When you're blaming and pointing the finger and you're not taking the right instruction muster, you're saying that there's a power other than God that directed your life. And this might sound like a rant, but this is all in the verses that we're dealing with tonight. So what I'm saying is that on the website, as I was watching the match, I finally had a breakthrough and understood what wrestling's about. And I tried to explain this in my latest class with Malcolm. Loretta, you missed that, and I know you were upset about that. So I'll give it over now what the main gist of that was. That there's a wisdom like breaking out like Harry Houdini in everything. Okay? Everything has a wisdom. There's a code to crack in everything you do. If when you wake up and you start mushling, there's a path. Neo locked in the office. There's a way out. That's what Morpheus is trying to say. And this is not interpretation. This is how wisdom works. There's always a path out. There's always a holy grail, so to speak. There's always the thing that you can accomplish. There's no such thing as failure. And these are not euphemisms. There's always a way. There's a technique for everything. This is why I can't just say, well, you guys weren't in yeshiva, and if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. There's always a way. Always a way of wisdom. Jim Jordan in the match cracked the code of how to win the match. He ciphered. Why was the character named Cypher? There's always a cipher. When I lecture in my videos, if I ever get lost, I learned the art from comedy clubs. When I worked in the clubs, you can talk your way out of anything because the mind process is real. It works. It's happening. It never isn't happening. You will come back to the point every time. You are never counted out, and there is no loss. So it's mathematically impossible. Obviously, it gets harder and harder, and we do give in. And some people don't want cattle prodding pain. And then if it comes down to an actual cattle prod, then it wasn't real wisdom and it wasn't worth your time, and it's not worth beating yourself up over. I tried beating myself up. Why wasn't I a great wrestler? I was fast. I was strong. That is what I can perceive the recipe to success. David Katz, you didn't know that you had to be burned by a cattle prod to succeed. Who knew? I'm saying, thank God I wasn't a great wrestler. Man, I don't want to be burned by a cattle prod. But in the ways of wisdom, with God, in life, you don't really have a choice. Again, if you're trying to get Ger, I don't have a choice to make it easy for you. If I do, I'm a phony. Some kind of gimmick like, hey, get Ger, it's on sale. It's not going to be easy. It can't be easy. As they say in Texas, it can't be easy. So therefore, there's the musar and the techacha. The techacha, the rebuke, that's kind of like when you guys see me pop up on the forum and just quote James Gosnell's name, like Eric, you and I were talking about. That's like my techacha. That's like me, the coach, saying, hey, Brian, use both your legs. I just kind of have to. I mean, why do I let my kid fall down when he's learning how to walk? Am I a cruel father? Why do we ground? Why is there din, like Eric Carlson said? There has to be. You get schooled when you're in school for wisdom. Why do I wrestle Reuven, my son, and I beat him up every single time I wrestle him down? He's never once beaten me. He just has to have that older brother kind of like Eric Bryan, like Dove Bear, right? The Papa Bear has to be his dad. And the funny thing is, as a kid, I see he loves it. He loves losing in the wrestling match to me. Because there's going to be a time that he gets older, he's going to beat the you-know-what out of me, and he's going to really understand that he earned it. Like today we were at the mall in Kiryat Shmona, and the kid took off running with the Pizza Hut. I'm like, man, if I were to run right now, this 7-year-old kid would beat me. Like, he's that old now that he can smoke me. And he earned it. It's not a joke anymore. The kid's faster than lightning. So, that's accomplishment. He's learned the instruction. The life taught him, if you're going to run, make it count. Don't just be some kind of prodding along. And he's a serious kid because of it. And he has a confidence because of it. And he has the wisdom because of it. All right. There's my long-winded, usual, mandatory introduction to the concept before we get into the Torah wisdom of the verses. 1 or 2. Where are you guys holding? You with me? Jacques, you with me? Where are you holding? All right, good. All right. I mean, I can talk about this at the end of time, just because I'm really resonating with it right now. I'm really resonating. It's like the way Mazel works. You never know why you do things, not until after the fact. It's like I don't enjoy being at my office and people saying, "Rabbi Katz, can't you just make it easy?" I would love to. In fact, I often ask myself, and Travis, you're a testament to this. Why do I make it hard? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I just know I have to. I know how to be a father to this thing. But tonight I've realized I now know exactly why I have to. Because King Solomon says that's how you get instruction. You're not going to get instruction any other way. I just never looked at it like some kind of weird wrestling practice or, whatever it is. A Mishlei attitude. But what I like about this series that we do every week is I like the Mishlei attitude of life. It's a trick question. Where is the tree of life mentioned anywhere outside of Bereshit? Anybody? I'm going to type it in. The tree of life, Etz Chaim. Where in Scripture, where is it written outside of Bereshit, Genesis? Anybody? One or two? Anybody? One place it's found in Proverbs. Thank you, Jacques. It's the only place. You know? And so if you want to learn, Ger is life. If you want to understand Ger and wisdom, then come to the Mishlei class. I mean, it's the worst secret around because I'm trying to tell people about it and nobody comes. But this is where it's at. You know, this is really where the technique of getting Ger is really brought to poel. Poel means like to action. Like, you know, I think Loretta's saying this, or I forget who. Ger is doing. You know, Ger is about action and doing and being. And so this class is really where you get to put those principles to life. And I'm trying to live those things. And I think I'm doing okay. You know, because again, if you're not doing it according to Solomon's wisdom, then what are you really doing? If we're not, we talk about wisdom on Facebook, but you know, if I wasn't teaching Mishlei, wouldn't that be a problem? You know what I mean? It's like, oh, Ger's about wisdom. And hey, Rabbi Katz, have you ever touched Mishlei? Oh, no, wisdom is not for me. Well, what do you mean? You're saying Ger's about wisdom? Oh, well, you know, I mean, come on. 1 + 1 = 2. If you're going to be talking Ger and wisdom, then please be involved in wisdom. So there is method to the madness, and that's good to see. I'm glad to see that it checks out, you know, because again, we sometimes forget why we do things. But, you know, Solomon himself says in Mishlei, never withhold the rod of chastisement from your son so that he should live. Meaning if you don't chastise, that's how you kill people. But if you chastise, God is with you, and that's how they live. And it's like, you know, people have come over to the office before. We're going to stop here pretty soon. I don't know who's going to come for the Q&A. We'll see. But people come and it's like, okay, can you just tell me, Ger? I'm yours. Okay, tell me, Ger. The answer is no. I'm not, there's no way to just. I mean, how do you? What is Ger? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. I have no idea. It could be a billion different things, and I guarantee whatever I say, you'll say something different. They'll say, no, I heard it was Okay, it's but you say it's something different. Okay, it's something different. The point is, if you're not getting at it with wisdom, there's a problem. And by that right, it really takes the mazel in retrospect to understand the wisdom that you do. So let's try to get some verses in real quick, right? Until people show up, if anybody shows up for the Q&A. Now, there's a very interesting Targum Yonasan, and that's the Aramaic translation and commentary on the Hebrew in our verse. All right, and this is very interesting because usually he doesn't bring in eccentric additional commentary, and here he does. So here it is. Hatuve to Avraham. Like this is talking about, remember the verse, like behold the praise of the guy, the people, or how happy are those who receive the rebuke of God in the Musar instruction of the name of God, Shaddai, do not refuse. So this is about the goodness of Abraham, who was Gavra Chasida. He grabbed, he manned, he was great about being kind, chesed, and over the top for God. Chosid, being over the top for God. That he entered he entered God. Does that make sense? He entered God. Because there really is a paradigm shift. You're either with God or you're not with God. You're either understanding God's hand in your life or you're not. You're either understanding with wisdom or you're not. You know, Ger is either some kind of Noahide doctrine from divine code, or it's just kind of like Torah Bible Ger with God. I mean, that's what it is. Ger is not Noahide. It's just kind of a nice kind of declaration of saying that I'm with God. Because Abraham, again, was the first Ger. So that's what ger is. It's tuve da Avraham gavre chasida di chasnine Eloha. All right, that's what ger is. Go tell people on Facebook that. Ha tuve da Avraham gavre chasida di chasnine Eloha. That's my definition of ger. Tell them the Rabbi Katz said it was that. The Ant Yisrael and Israel, the rebuke of Shaddai, do not distance yourselves. So again, it's behold or take the goodness of Abraham. That's what it means. Praiseworthy or happy is the man. We're saying the Abraham is the man. It's the goodness of Abraham that he was Gavra Chasida. He was over the top with God, man. Okay, and Abraham is like the paradigm ger, having received it from Shem. That's what ger is. Just being over the top of whatever Abraham was of entering God space, God reality. So then, everybody, the Tolda Zera, the offspring of Abraham, whether it's by ger proper, okay, however you have become attached to Abraham, whether it's you're a Bo Tshuva Jew, whether you're born religious, whether you're a ger, whatever it is, that you recognize that you're an Abraham kind of person. By doing that, you're saying that you're in God's space. Then by that right, it's already Israel, right? First house, second house, third house, fourth house, Cohen, Levi, Israel, ger, right? Once you've just kind of nilvad your way into Israel, attached to Israel, you've acknowledged Abraham's space. You understand God runs the universe. You've taken your portion of Israel. Then you only have one more lesson to go. And that is the rebuke of God, the God who rules the world, the name of Shaddai. Don't distance yourself from that. It's really a two-step or three-step, whatever, how many operation, right? Enter God's space because you're a wild Abraham. Understand that you're in the path of wisdom, and that's Israel. Understand that you fell in love with God on high, Eloha, as the commentary will say. You fell in love with God on high, which we all do. But then the real power of Mazel is when you recognize God in the world, right? That's what wisdom is you use wisdom to connect to God in this world. And that's the name of God, Shaddai, Shin Dalid Yud. That's real immanence of God. And you all want to be enlightened by that God, right? Everyone wants to be enlightened by God. It is Yesod, 100%. But then when God, just whaps you on the head and takes you to school and does an Allen Iverson crossover dribble on you, you're basically saying God, why would you do that? Because you forgot that you're a freshman on the Iowa Hawkeye wrestling team. And the coach actually thinks that you're going to be an NCAA champion. And you have to pay your dues. Or whatever other Mazel story that you have to live out. Because you have Mazel. Okay? And you just don't understand the story. You don't understand what game. I mean, only tonight I'm starting to finally get my Mazel and what wrestling match I'm wrestling with, Blumensteel and Noah Hyde Nations, Ask Noah. I was saying, how did I even find myself in some ridiculous cattle prodding wrestling match at my age? I thought I was doing good. It's like, man, but don't forget, David Katz, there is a God. He runs the universe, and you're being beat up in the Iowa Hawkeye wrestling room. The point is that you have identity, and the world recognizes you, and you have to learn how to recognize yourself. And in that recognition, I wouldn't even call it competition. It's just kind of the way of the world, right? People kind of just rub elbows and grind. And there's a natural enemy, right? If you're serving coffee at the coffee shop, I might yell at you because I want my coffee on time, and I want to know, why are you smoking a cigarette in the back? And you're saying, hey, leave me alone, I'm on break. And I say, I want my coffee. You have to understand that through Amunah, that the mazel imagery, whatever it is you're living, I see you as the coffee shop person smoking your cigarette, and I'm an angry, upset, impatient customer. And this is how God sets your mazel. So it's your job to understand what that is on high with your soul. Yeah, maybe you're the whatever it is. I mean, who knows? It's your name, your mazel. And the only reason why you're upset is because you don't realize that you're an employee working in God's system and that you're expected to deliver me my coffee. And I want my coffee. But what goes around comes around, because I'm so busy yelling at you, I turned around in haste and spilled my coffee on some other guy. And he punches me in the nose. And I say, how dare you punch me in the nose? He says, didn't you know that you're Mike Tyson and I'm Evander Holyfield and we're boxing it out? I mean, whatever metaphor you want to use, okay? Whatever metaphor it is, you need to understand your relationship with God, why he's chastising you, why he's rebuking you, why he's turning the whole world against you. But isn't it the other way around? Hashem puts us here to give us the corrections necessary for us, even if we don't know it. Well, that's why he's doing it. But you need to, if you're even having to ask, what is God doing? Then you don't know your own situation. You have to know your reality. This is what we're going to get into the class tomorrow, right? Eric, I've known you for a long time. But if you can't say with absolute expertise why I'm punching you in the face, all you're doing is you're telling yourself, don't blame Rabbi Katz. He's a nice guy, and he probably didn't realize that he was even yelling at me. That's not good enough, because you're really blaming me, but you're telling yourself not to blame me. The bottom line is you have to understand why I punched you in the face, why God is asking more of you. What was the sin that you did? What are you trying to fix? Right? This is the whole point I want to get at tomorrow's class. You see what I'm saying? It's very easy to give generalizations. I can very simply say, Rabbi Blumenstiel just doesn't understand Ger. He doesn't understand me, and therefore he's having a hard time with it. But that doesn't cut it, because that's a simple blame. I'm going to have to answer up that egotistical claim that I make every single day that he doesn't get it. It's going to get old and tiring. And in the end of the day, I didn't answer anything. I just put a big Band-Aid on a problem that I don't know what the answer is. So you have to get specific in how you receive from God. You have to hit the mark. Hit the mark. That's why there's a big difference between mazel and merit. Right? So you can say I merited God, to give me chastisement, to reprove my ways, but it doesn't work that way. Mazel has to hit the mark directly. Right? You have to that's why the Navi here uses the name of God Shaddai, because it's a name of God. You're the one that pointed out it's Yesod. When you said, but isn't it the other way around? Hashem puts us here to give us the corrections necessary for us, even if we don't know it. Who's Hashem, Eric? Please give me the name Hashem that you're referring to. What is Hashem in your mind? And when you type that, what is Hashem? Did you mean that? Did you mean that Hashem is Shaddai? Because Hashem usually refers to Yud Kei Vav Kei. Or, God, the Almighty Lord above, whatever it is. My point, right, but this is not that. This is not that. This is God saying, I'm putting the Mike Tyson boxing gloves on for you to find me in creation. And we know it's all God. That's my point. Everything's from God. I can just insult every single one of you right now, and you all can say, well, yeah, I guess we had it coming. It's from God too. Not a problem. But you really need to know, what is Rabbi Katz's problem for insulting me right now, if that were the case. You see what I'm saying? Hit you in the head so you look around for what's already revealed. Yeah, you have to know what reality. You have to, who was it, Brian? You said you got to know the shot. You got to be able to hit the shot. You got to know, call the shot. Generalities don't get anywhere. They just don't. You got to really hit the mark and be precise. This is what I also want to give a message to the Ger world, right? Learning Ger, why it's so hard? Because it's absolutely precise. There's at least 10 different kinds of Ger Toshav. Everybody that knows my material knows that. So when I see Blumenstiel trying to tell me that I'm saying that it's the Ger Toshav of the Rambam in 14.8 in Isuri Bia, do you know how dumb that really sounds? I mean, no offense, but seriously. That's like telling a wine connoisseur that it's Mad Dog 2020, okay? Can you get a bigger insult than that? You're like, hey, that's some good wine right there. What is that? That Mad Dog 2020? You'll get thrown out of an institution. You can't say that kind of thing. Ger Toshav is such an intricate learning piece. It is my life work up to date in terms of the revealed aspects of law. It is so intricate, so many different directions. It's like Shakespeare and Torah. And then for people to reject it because of every wrong reason makes no sense to me whatsoever. But at the same time, it's because they don't realize that, the art form. It's armchair quarterback, right? We all watch the football games and say that Brett Favre is an idiot for making the interception, right? But in the end, are you Brett Favre? Do you really know? Do you really know what defense they called against you? I mean, can you honestly say that you have that wisdom, that you know football at that level? You don't. So, it's an appreciation of wisdom, because when you can get the subtleties of God in this world down that refined, then you're starting to really recognize God. So now let's go into this one last commentary. I've basically given most of it, and I really like this one. This is like an explanation of the Malbim, right? And we'll end with this. This is going to be the end. I guess nobody showed up for the Q&A, which also is an enigma, right? Everybody wants to know what Ger is. Here it is, 10:20 Q&A Ger. No one shows. Who knows? Anyways, let me see. Maybe somebody should. Let's see if anybody. I don't think anybody logged on. Let's see. There we go. And I'm not trying to call people out. I'm really not. I just kind of want dialogue. I think dialogue is fair. Everything I've said is public and vocal. It's all on Facebook. I'm just kind of giving my personal take. And and what also kills me is you can't post this stuff on Facebook. Only because I would love to just tell people how I feel. But it's like, well, why can't you just type it on Facebook? Can you really type what I'm saying on Facebook? Do you want to read 25 paragraphs of wisdom about how I feel about the situation? I mean, seriously. It's not that I don't have what to say. Trust me, I have what to say. But, can we at least get a forum of normal cognitive thought to convey ideas? It's not a forum. It's not even really a debate. It's just kind of like Boker Tov, man. Wake up to the sugya. There's a lot going on, more than a couple of lines in a Facebook forum. By the way, this is what my Texas trip was about. Texas was just, Loretta, you were there. Texas, it was about, hello, here I am. We're talking Ger. Yirmiyahu, you were there. It's just straight up. It's shot. It's real. And that's what I don't understand, why people aren't viewing it with a real mentality. Torah is real. King Solomon's words are real. Here we go. Yeah, this is my first talk back from Texas. That's why I'm a little bit fired up. I literally have had this all caged up inside since a long time. I got back from Texas. My mom made Aliyah, so that's been a whole nightmare with the bureaucracy. The kids were out of school on summer break. Then they went back to school, and then there was the high holidays for literally a month. That's how crazy that is. Literally the month of Tishrei. the Ger world just kind of got a little funny on Facebook, which made me a little bit itchy. And as everybody knows, Brian, you know as well as I do, I have not had classes the whole time. I know you asked me about 20,000 times. And also Eric, Brian, and Travis are asking me when I'm going to come back in the office to, touch base with the new people. Man, it's good to be back. It's good to be back. And I think the person I want to say kol kavod to the most is Jacques. Jacques, you guys are ripping it up down in South Africa. I mean, seriously, I'm very, very happy with what I'm seeing. You got the books. I mean, you're using the expression making garum. I'm very, very glad to see what's going on in South Africa, Jacques. So I just kind of had that in the back of my mind. I'm seeing Facebook. I haven't been in touch. I haven't talked to a lot of people, but I am seeing what's going on. I guess Travis, I told you I've seen you popping up. Eric, Brian, I told you the same thing. You guys were not a surprise to me as much as you may have thought that it was. Eric Carlson, I'm seeing your emails. Don't think you're not appreciated too. Everybody is. I really appreciate everybody involved. I really do. And I just haven't been able to say that in such a long time. It's been, since the beginning of August. So, and everybody else has their piece too. Yirmiyahu, I'm really glad to have met you in person. Right. That was very important for me that you came. I was looking for you. I didn't know where you were going to pop up. I didn't know if it was going to be Lubbock or if it was going to be in Abilene. I thought you were just up in Abilene. I'm like, where is this guy? So I'm glad to see you in Lubbock. And Lars, you and I have a thing going on. You came to the office in real time. So, and Loretta, you showed up at Anita's house. So, anyways, I'm glad to see there's a good strong core because I just kind of forgot where we're standing. Travis, I was asking you where we're at. Eric, I'm asking you where we're at. Loretta, I'm asking you where we're at. So today's the first day of being back on the saddle and get this new year in stride. So just a quick kol kavod to everybody. And it's good to be back in the classroom. All right, here we go. An ending commentary for tonight since I guess nobody showed up for the Q&A. Now we're going to explain by me that there is a difference between Musar, which by now we should know what Musar means, the instruction, rebuke, school, and Tochacha. Again, for the Matrix followers, Musar is ending up with the cell phone of Neo, and the Tochacha is Morpheus calling him and telling him to go out on the scaffolding. You guys get that? One or two? All right. That Tochacha is with words. Morpheus spoke with words. And it comes to most people equally. Meaning that Tom Brady gets his humble pie from Bill Belichick, the same as the guy who's who carries Tom Brady's cleats, okay? And the point of God doing this is to make an enchanting, how do you say this? I looked it up. 1 second. Enchanting beatdown, okay, on the soul. Meaning when you get beat up by God, He does it in a way that it's obviously the hand of God, and there's a type of revelation. You see what I'm saying? There's a revelation, something's going on here. Even when I'm being shady with the Ger stuff, right? No one assumes Rabbi Katz is totally out to lunch and he's clueless about Ger. They're saying, "What's the shtick? Like, what is it? What's he doing? Like, why is it we ask a question, he posts, James Gosnell's name? Why is he doing that? You see what I'm saying? There's like, when you do the Musar, you leave kind of a trail. Like when I chastise my son, so to speak, right? He knows he can get back to his father. I do it in a way, and everybody that has kids knows this. You do it in a way that you're not just mercilessly cruel to your kid. You do it in a way that really he can find his way back. And yeah, my son does. Reuven does. Yeah, there's breadcrumbs. It's like, I might turn off the television suddenly when they spill their drink in the living room. And it's like, is it really that extreme, Dad? Really? So the answer is no, it isn't. So then what's the shtick? The shtick is, whatever it is. I might have guests coming over later, and I really don't need the house trash, and you're not getting the lesson. So let me show you a little bit of shock therapy and show you don't spill the crumbs because I got guests coming over in an hour. But it's like a lot of information to convey, and you need to get the point. So it's like out of proportion, but in a merciful way, right? That's how God beats you up. And therefore, he forces these Yisurim. Yisurim is, when the Matrix has a glitch, right? When you show up at the coffee shop in the morning, and this happened to me many times, 6 a.m., and you're thinking like, yeah, I'm going to get there at 6 a.m. It's an off day. I'm going to have my cup of coffee and read the newspaper. It's all good. It's all good on my Wednesday. You get there, and there's like 4 catering orders, okay? And you have to like slam at 6 a.m. You strolled out of bed at 5:30 after getting into bed at 2:30, and your whole great day just went out to the wayside, right? All of a sudden, you're drinking 10 cups of coffee just to keep your eyes open, and you never did get the newspaper, and you're saying, like, why me? Okay? Or you're afraid of Onish. You're afraid of punishment. So he's either putting you through one of those things, or you're getting the fear of punishment to wake you up, right? You overslept your alarm clock, and you're saying, how could this be? I set the alarm clock. My boss is never going to believe that it didn't go off again. Why is this happening to me? Why is this happening? So it's one of those. Or it comes from the great or the small. From the great to the small, right? It could be literally you lost all your money. It could be that your neighbor just, accidentally rang the doorbell to the wrong house in the middle of the night and woke you up. By God, it comes also the rebuke with the problems. Again, the ending up in the office structure with the cell phone coming to Neo, rebuke often comes with that. So it's when it rains, it pours. You guys know what that means, right? So not only did you wake up and you had to go to work and the catering orders were piled up and your day of Gan Eden was ruined, your wife called you and said, honey, I wrecked the car today. And the mechanic says, that it's your fault for the car because you shouldn't have had it fixed the last time you got the whatever fixed. So it's your fault. I broke down, and it's your fault. Way to go. You guys know those days? 1 or 2? And it's like, how is this possible? How in the world are you blaming me for the car that broke down when I don't even know what the thing is? How is that possible? How in the world is that possible? Okay. And there's a difference between the rebuke, which comes gently, and it comes to everybody to return them from an evil way for the future. What is your wife telling you when she says, by the way, it's your fault that you didn't fix the thing in the car, and that's why I broke down? She's saying, hello, if next time I ask you to pay attention to what I'm saying, and I ask you to repair the engine with the good mechanic, because he understands Honda, you took it to the other guy who's a friend of your friend, and he only deals with American cars, and he doesn't get the Honda. So because of you, I end up stranded on the highway. Okay, so God says, hey, let's go ahead and do some good engineering here. Let's do the Honda American Car Repair Highway Day on the day of all the catering orders. Why not? Why not? Bob will get the message if we team it up. In the Musar, right, which is ending up with Agent Smith, is the difficult punishment, and it comes because of a sin that you did. So what did you do? you, not because you didn't just know the car thing, okay? You sinned. And that's why the catering orders lined up. Let's just say, hey, you're not supposed to be a coffee guy. I'm trying to let you know that you have a greater purpose. And if you're going to be the world's greatest coffee guy, you need to get cattle prodding on your hands, so to speak. So I'm trying to let you know that you made a big life move and you're loving it. You're trying to convince yourself, like, yeah, I love coffee. But you're busy pointing the blame, just like me as a wrestler, on everybody. My boss doesn't recognize how great I am, and they don't understand that, I'm more than this, and they don't get how difficult it is to get the decaf right? You're blaming everybody, and God's trying to say, we would understand you if you would accept the cattle prodding. But you don't want that. So I'm trying to tell you that you need to quit the job, and you need to get on with your life. Yes, Travis, but you don't want it in the form of cattle prodding. Like I say about Shefa, right? You're going to get Shefa. God is giving it to you. Do you want it in drugs, sex, and alcohol and women? Or do you want it in wisdom and the tree of life and Torah wisdom? You see what I'm saying? You're going to get stuff. Do you want McDonald's, or do you want food, real absolute food? In the Kabbalistic terms, do you want Klippa or do you want Kedusha? Because you're getting it either way. It's like religion, right? You're going to get religion. No one doesn't get religion. But you're either going to get, like, convincing yourself that it's Jesus in the church, or, St. Menachem's church in certain circles, or do you want truth, right? It's up to you. You're going to get your dose of spirituality. Even the atheist, he is just a mixed up spiritualist. Okay, here we go. So therefore, that's the kind of things that are coming your way. Now, why does it say the name of God Shaddai, Eric Carlson? Why does it say the name Shaddai? To show that God is able. Hold on. Forget this word. I looked it up. 1 second. 1 second. Chalut. The final decision. Surround, tie up, make final, permanently. And that was, God is able to. 1 second. Shashem Shaddai Mitzrayim make final. 1 second. Hold on. It was like already 2 hours ago I looked that up. 1 second. The Shadded Ma'archa he is able to. The name of God, Shaddai, is able to basically overpower the system. Okay? To rebuke, like muster you, instruct you with harsh instructions against nature. So God, and this is why God creates the Satan, right? Because God is the master of all creation. And the Satan rewrites programming. It's corruption, like a corrupt file. So if God says, Bob is off the beaten path, and I want Bob to go this way because Bob has free will. And all the other commentaries are saying that you got in trouble because you're free will. Your free will took you to a place that was too far. So the Satan says that, God is God. It works for God. It's part of God's creation. And you literally have moments of insanity. It's cattle prodding, exactly. You just weren't paying attention okay, stop lying. Why did you oversleep? Why did your alarm not go off? Was it a bona fide miracle? No, the answer is no, it was not a miracle. The real answer was you weren't paying attention and you set it for 5:30 p.m. instead of 5:30 a.m. And you're a liar and you try telling your boss, I don't know. It just didn't go off. And your boss is like, dude, there's no such thing as it just didn't go off. And then you start lying like, yeah, well, they had the power out in my neighborhood. Yeah, they're always working on the electric pools. And, we all have been there, right? What is your boss going to tell you? No, the power didn't go out. But the real answer is you were not paying attention and you set it for 5:30 p.m. And you're asking yourself, why am I so stupid? Why am I moron, man? Why am I so stupid? And the answer is you're actually not that stupid. God did the Satan on you and just totally corrupted your file, and you did it wrong because God was setting you up to see God's hand. He overpowered the creation. He had your buddy call you on the phone. You're like, yeah, dude, I got to go to bed now. I got to be up at like 5:30. And he called the Satan. You had your friend bamboozle you with that enchanted state of mind that God does that got you to see the problem, right? The whole thing was bamboozled. You were in the space of God and didn't realize it. Thus, the creation conspired against you because we love you and we want you to stop selling coffee and we want you to be a greater scholar and the tree of life. That's the name of God, Shaddai. Eric Carlson, do you see now why it really matters? Because if you can understand why you're corrupt, why God corrupts you with your friend Bob that calls you in the middle of the night and gets you to do your alarm clock wrong, and your wife is always saying, I don't like Bob. You're like, hey, Bob is great. Leave me alone. I love Bob. She's like, I don't know. I don't feel good about Bob. Because your wife understands Bob is the Satan. God has created him to be a Satan, and you fall victim to it, and she really doesn't want you to get fired. But you have to learn how to communicate better because you want to quit your job as a coffee guy to get better Kedusha in your shefa, and you're trying to find out what is the Satan here. Why she doesn't like Bob? Why do I have to move on? Why is it not good enough? Why am I not? It's Satan. But to just say, God made it so doesn't answer up the question. Why are you being corrupted in this world? Right? Why are people overwriting your files? Why are people saying there's no Ger today? Right? If that's not the biggest corrupt file I've ever seen, I don't know what is. That is a corrupt file. Right? I have never taught once that we're making a Ger movement that the Rambam says there's a Ger Toshav today. Never in my life have I said that in serious tone. But there are people who are actually believing that that's what I've taught. That's a Satan. That's a corruption. And I'm asking myself, why is that corruption in my life? And everybody, it needs to be asking themselves, why is this corruption here? But that's God. God empowers the corruption to better our ways so that, as Travis says, we should find Adam back in the garden. Because apparently you're not in the garden. Wherever you are, you're not there. If you were there, you would know you're there. And therefore, the name of God, Elohah, like the deity of God that Abraham entered his space, that is God on high. I think, Eric Carlson, that's what you're talking about, right? That is just God, right? When you finally say it was God, then it's like, that's when you say, Baruch Hashem, it was God, right? I'm not crazy, and people are not conspiring against me, and I'm not losing my mind, and I'm not too dumb to set my alarm clock. It is God, God himself. And therefore, we use the Musar is in the name Shaddai. So when life is teaming up against you, it really, and you're pointing fingers and blaming, like we're going to talk tomorrow, you are unaware of the God's name Shaddai. And this is really where Jesus comes from. 100% King David says it. It's straight up. Jesus is the institution that answers up for Shaddai. Right? It's to say that I have a hard time connecting to God. There's this intermediate kind of existence of spirituality. It's too hard for me, so we'll deify it in some kind of avodah zarah, and therefore I don't have to deal with the name of God, Shaddai. Right? Would you say that Shaddai is Hod coming into Yesod? Absolutely. 100%. Nice pshat. That's very good. Right? And I think Yeshu is a type of corruption of the name Shaddai. Look at that, Yud Shin, right? And I talk about this in Abilene, and I think it's a definite corruption. Definite corruption. By the way, the name El Shaddai is the gematria Moshe. So there's a lot there. And also it comes the Musar, very strong and oppressive from Shaddai will come, and that you are not to what do you call that? What's the word for timas again, Brian? Like in the translation is to distance yourself. Right? So don't distance yourself from the rebuke. Okay? You're going to get Satan in your life. You're going to be corrupted. You're going to make mistakes. You're human. Don't reject, right? You don't reject God. Okay? You're not supposed to embrace Satan, but you're not going to stop the Satan from coming on to you over the alarm clock. The repair of the world, according to Vilna Gaon and Kol Tor, is the defeat of the Satan. Okay, that is the end game. But you don't just go right to shooting the basket in the hoop and say I'm a basketball player. There's a whole infrastructure. Larry Bird proved that. Larry Bird proved that if it's about scoring the basket, then he's the greatest that ever lived because he can do it every time. But it's not practical to do in the game of basketball. You don't just make baskets and say that's what it's about. Right? So you don't just kill the Satan and you won't do it, right? Beating the Satan is with Chachma. It's the end goal. So you have to endure the pain, right? I mean, otherwise you would say that by the time you're able to shoot basketball, you should just make it 3 feet tall when you're 4 years old and never progress to a pro-sized court. So there's the end of the game. The Musar, the instruction is that God does create the Satan. In the book of Job is where the Satan is mentioned by name. The Musar is that you're not perfect. You have free will. You've brought the Satan upon yourself. Your job is not to blame it. And that's the addiction, is that we want to blame it and point fingers at it and hold it hostage and hold it accountable for our shortcomings. When the bottom line is you're supposed to identify it and understand how it is an agent of a creation, that we're all creations with God. And you have to recognize that God is the master of creation and that God has a purpose for you and a plan and a wisdom. And eventually the Satan will disappear, right? You can overpower your Satan. But if you're going to go at it like some kind of crazy bo tshuva, you're going to get in trouble. Because ultimately you're going against God and you're saying that you know more about you than God. And that's what I was saying. You got to know who you are. You got to know your purpose, your place, your wisdom, your path. You got to find yourself back in the garden, and then you'll realize, like the day of Yom Kippur, there's no Satan. And that is really the end of the game, and that is what redemption's about. And hopefully we see it in our lifetime. You know, Hashem Hu Elohim, God is one. The Satan is what keeps God's unification separate. So he's an adversary. The name Satan literally means adversary. And you know, it's the adversary created by God, which means it's like the adversary of God. So if you think you can do that with one arm tied behind your back, then I wish you all the success in the world. Otherwise, like we're saying, Travis, you and I, it takes teamwork, takes everybody involved. You can't do it alone. Larry Bird cannot beat the Bulls by himself. But with unity in mankind, and as we're saying also, Travis, you and I before the class, that it really is about Adam and everybody, Ger, universe, mankind. And that's what Ger message is. It is about that. And unfortunately, because it is about that, there's kind of like an obvious revelation of Satan. I'm not saying that anybody is the Satan. It's just that we see how corruption comes into our lives. Corruption, like on files, on the computer. People, misquoting things, doing dumb stuff. I mean, I've done dumb stuff, putting things on the internet without editing them and So, our own shortcomings, our own moron man, your own Yetzer Hara is the Satan. So, to put the blame on somebody else, you're not acknowledging your own personal Moloch, your own Yetzer Hara, your own Satan that you do wrong. You're not perfect also. So, but we can rise above it. God gave the Torah. God gives wisdom. And in the end of the day, evil will be swallowed up to victory, which means the bad will become very good, meaning all will be revert to good. Klippa will yield to the good of the world. The bad will be subordinate to holiness. That's the premise of the Ramchal. And welcome back, everybody, to the Mishlei class. I had a good time, and I'm glad we got to do this, and I think we had a good class. So, yeah, Shakoyach, we're back on the saddle. I know I feel better after getting it off my chest. That's for sure.